Good morning, YouTube. Well, I'm still on vacation. I'm actually now in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. So we're on our way back from Florida. We stayed in Florida for a week. On the way out, we actually stopped in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Then we stayed in Fort Myers Beach, Florida. And now we're in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. This was kind of just to break up the trip because it's a 20+ hour drive. So if you split it up into 2 days, make it 10 hours each day, works out about perfect. We're gonna try and get this in before the big storm comes. So you can see it's kind of sunny and nice over here, but yeah, that's coming for us right now. So I looked on the radar and oh yeah, we're about to get our butts kicked with some serious storm. It seems to be how this whole trip has been. Every single day we've gotten rain, but I mean, I guess it's what happens along the Gulf in the summer. It's so different than Texas where it's like every day it's like sunny and hot, sunny and hot. That's your, these birds are pissed off. They know the rain's coming. We do have Mo with us. Mo is investigating the birds, trying to figure out, oh look, there's a bird right there and right there. He's checking them out. Yeah. Oh, there goes the bird. Oh, sorry. Your buddy's leaving you, Mo. Oh, did he catch something? I think he caught something. But anyway, yeah. Look at this. We got pelicans and we got all sorts of birds. I think they know the storm's coming, so they're all freaking out, trying to get somewhere safe. So actually what I wanted to talk about today was my stock options. So I just did a video talking about how I had a nice windfall. One of the companies I used to work for was acquired. And I think a lot of people don't fully understand how that exactly works. And there's actually a lot of ways it can play out. And the way it played out for me is actually even more unusual than it is for most people. I had a very odd situation in which I actually had left the company but bought my options. What happened was when I first started working for Modernize, they gave me an options plan, and we're not going to use any real numbers here, just to be clear, okay, up front. So no real numbers. Also note that I am not a tax advisor and I'm not an investment advisor, so everything I'm saying here is my own opinions. Don't do anything I'm saying. Don't listen to me. It's not legal advice. It is what it is, okay? This is just how it played out for me. So that's what we're going to talk about.
So are you recording all of the nefarious activities?
Hold on. Sorry to interrupt. I totally forgot. First of all, if you're new to the channel, my name is Dan, and this channel is all about the supercar ownership experience. The other thing is, I wanted to mention that if you go to my website, normalguysupercar.com, I have a new service that I'm offering for you guys. So if you happen to be looking for a supercar for sale and you just need some help, go to my website and fill out the form under the buy sell section, looking for a supercar. If you fill out that form, I'll try and help you find a supercar, and if we find you a supercar and you buy it, then you can pay me some sort of finder's fee. But otherwise, it's a free service to submit that information. And then also along with that, if you happen to have a supercar, and let's say you don't really want to sell it, but maybe you'd be interested if you got the right number, you can go to the sell a supercar form and put in your car's information, and at the very bottom you can select that you don't want it publicly published. So that way you can actually privately submit all that information to me, and that allows me to kind of play matchmaker for any of you that happen to be looking to buy or sell a supercar. So typically, if you're working for a company and they give you options, most commonly people stay at the company until something happens. So Modernize was not public, they were actually an S Corp. So that actually brings up weird tax implications, and we'll go over that in a minute. As a private company, they gave me stock options, and what happened was when I first started working, and again, we're just gonna use some hypothetical numbers. So let's say when I first started working there, they gave me 1% options of the company. So that means they were willing to give me 1% of the ownership of the entire company. Now, let's say when I first started working for the company that they were worth $5 million, which isn't true, but let's just say they were, okay? And typically if you're going to work for a startup, you know, they're not valued too highly yet. So, you know, a lot of times they're worth like under $1 million. Sometimes they could be worth like 20, 30 million bucks. It just depends on the size of the company, how much money they're bringing in, all that sort of stuff. So we'll just say $5 million, that way the math's really easy. So we're saying 1% of $5 million, so $50,000 worth of stock options. Now, at that point in time, those options are given to me, but I don't own them. So it's basically an agreement that says you can buy 1% of this company for $50,000 if you choose to at some point in the future. There are some interesting laws about filling out, what is it, like Form 1409, I don't remember, some form where you could actually do some weird tax things, and I didn't know about that at the time. If you get into a situation where you're gonna go work for a private company that gives you stock options and you believe the chances of success are extremely high, you need to look up into this information about how to do the tax management for it. But I didn't know about this law, so I got screwed on my taxes. Or I shouldn't say screwed, but I paid more taxes than I could have otherwise had I been more knowledgeable about how to do this right. What happened for me is that I worked for the company for 4 years. My options had a vesting period, which meant the longer I'd worked for them, the more of that 1% they would actually allow me to purchase. After 4 years, my options had not quite fully vested, but again, we're going to just use simple numbers and we're going to say that they had, okay, just to make the math really easy. So that meant after that period of time, I can now purchase that full 1%. You know, if I'd only worked there for half the duration of the investment period, then I could only buy half the stock. You get the, you know, it's a very linear equation. You know, if you work there for 1 year, you could buy 1/4 of it. It was a 4-year vesting period. After working there for 4 years, I found another position, or I should say the other position found me, and I ended up taking this other job, so I decided to leave Modernize. Now, when I left the company, they have a 90-day policy on the stock option. So basically, if you left the company, you had 90 days to determine if you were going to exercise your options or let them expire. So that meant in 90 days, I could either buy my stock options or I could just walk away and have nothing. So the problem with that is, of course, I had to come up with the value of those stock options, which was, you know, again, under our hypothetical situation, $50,000. So I felt like their chances of success were very high, so I decided to exercise those options. Now, that is where it gets a little bit unusual, is I bought my options and then held on to them. And a lot of times, if you don't leave the company, if you stick with the company, you don't exercise your options until some liquidity event happens, whether the company gets acquired or they go public or something like that, right? In those scenarios, you are exercising your options as the liquidity event happens. So the tax situation is totally different. In those situations, you immediately realize the gains of your stock because you're being bought out of your options, and you have to pay normal income tax on those gains. So let's go into a quick hypothetical situation. Same numbers, $50,000, 1% of a $5 million company. Let's say it's been a few years, you're still at the company and they get acquired for, I don't know, $50 million, okay? So if they get acquired for $50 million, your $50,000 options are now worth $500,000. So you exercise them because they're being acquired, so you're bought out at $500,000. You have a net gain of $450,000. Now, what's nice is when that happens, typically they'll allow you to pay the $50,000 out of the $500,000 value. So effectively, they're just going to say, we're just going to give you $450,000. Now, the downside is, at that moment, you now have to pay income tax, which is going to bump you into pretty much the highest tax bracket, which in the US is, what is it, like 39, we'll just say it's about 39% right now. So you're going to have to pay 39% taxes on $450,000. So you're talking, over $200,000. Pretty substantial taxes, which also means that you're going to only come out, end of the day, you're coming out with about $200,000 and something, which, hey, that's pretty badass, right? $200,000 payday, you shouldn't be complaining, probably pretty happy with that. So that is a common scenario. My situation, again, not the same. So I left the company, I decided to exercise my options, I bought them for $50,000, or, you know, in this situation, and at that point, I had to pay AMT taxes. So I didn't have to pay capital gains, I didn't have to pay normal income tax, because at that point I had not sold the options. But what had to happen is they had to say, how much is the company worth today? So we'll just say the company says, oh, we're worth $20 million at this point because it's been 4 years. You start at $5 million, now they're worth $20 million. Great. So I had to pay 25% taxes, or I think it was 28. I think it's 28%. We'll just say 25 because the math is easier, but 28% taxes on the difference between that $50 million and $200,000 because we're saying it's worth $20 million. So I had to pay 25% taxes on $150,000, which I can't do the math in my head. So my total investment at that point would be $50,000 plus that tax bill of whatever, $35,000 or whatever. So you've got almost $100,000, you know, $80,000+ sunk into this situation. No, are you getting wet? You're not very happy with this, are you? You want to go in? Okay, let's go in. We're gonna go in. It's kind of getting wet. Okay, so continuing the hypothetical situation. By the way, I'm gonna talk a little bit quiet because Megan's still asleep. It's really early. It's like 6:30 in the morning. So now at this point, you've paid in $50,000 plus the taxes, and you own 1% of this company. And so in the meantime, again, remember earlier I said it's an S corp. It's got weird tax implications. So an S corp means that it has pass-through taxation, which means every year I become now responsible for paying 1% of the tax bill of that company. If they made 10 million bucks, you need to pay taxes on $100,000 of that profit at my tax rate. So let's just say it's 30%. I don't know what the tax bracket is. It could be higher or lower. So that means I would have to pay $30,000 in taxes every year for owning that company. Now, the company will give distributions or dividends to pay for those taxes. So basically they'd say, hey, of the money we made, we're going to give you $40,000, $50,000 to help you pay for that $30,000 tax bill. So you actually end up gaining a little bit of money in the meantime. Some companies give you very large distributions, some don't. They gave us pretty reasonable ones, so I would, you know, at the end of the year, I would gain, we'll say, $10,000 to $20,000 a year just because I own that company. So that carried on for, what, almost 5 years before Modernize was acquired. So now, in this scenario, they get acquired, I own 1% of the company, they get valued. So the actual valuation of Modernize when they got acquired was $67.5 million. So under our hypothetical situation of owning 1% of the company, that means you now get $670,000 or $675,000, right? So the way the tax on that work is you say, because I've already paid my AMT taxes on a valuation of $200,000, the gain of the value of that is actually $675 minus the $200. So you actually have $475,000 that you're being taxed on instead of the full $675,000. Also, because I've owned that company for a long period of time, it is not taxed at normal income tax. It is taxed at long-term capital gains, which is 15 or 20% depending on your tax situation. So we'll just say it's 15%. So now I'm only paying 15% of taxes on $400,000 instead of if you had still been working there and they got acquired, you'd be paying 39% taxes on 675 minus 50. So you'd be paying 620. You'd be paying almost 50% taxes on $625,000. So you're gonna be paying about $300-something thousand. So in that scenario, you're netting out about $300-something thousand. In my scenario, you're netting out, we'll just say $60,000 in taxes. So you take the 675 minus how much I put into it. So we're down to basically 600. We'll just say 600 minus the taxes we're going to have to pay, which is about, like, let's say it's $60,000. So now we're down to $520,000 that are netting out. So it actually works out better to have exercised the options and been taxed at long-term capital gains rather than holding on to the options and being taxed at income tax at the time it gets acquired. I know it gets really wonky and it's complicated, and I had to read up on all this stuff because I didn't understand it all, and I'm not even sure I'm 100% explaining it correctly. Obviously, in these scenarios, it's probably worth hiring someone to help you. Oh, and someone's going to note, this is not tax, what is it? It's not tax evasion, it's tax avoidance. So there's lots of ways to have tax avoidance. Avoidance is legal, evasion is not. So you don't want to do tax evasion, you want to do tax avoidance. It's all about trying to minimize your taxes, not pay taxes, right? That gives you an idea of how these things work when you work for these startups and private companies and they have acquisitions. It's fairly complicated, but you can end up having a nice payday at some point. Now, the big thing is you have to do the math of, is something like that worth the reduced income that you're likely to get working for a startup? So keep in mind, working for startups, very frequently they don't pay you as big a salary as you get working for a bigger company. So I would argue my salary was never quite as competitive as if I had gone and worked for a big company that could actually, afford to pay you big salaries and have 401k matching and all that stuff. In lieu of having all those benefits, I had an options package, and did that options package equate to as much money as I could have made having a bigger income, putting that money in the stock market, investing it for that entire duration, which, the total duration from the start to finish of that scenario is over 8 years. So we're talking closer to a decade, right? So I think it was 9 years duration from the start when I first got hired at Modernize to just recently when they were acquired. Over a duration of 9 years, can you make more money putting that money in the stock market? Maybe. I mean, I effectively got an over 10x return in 5 years of actually putting my money into it. That's pretty substantial. There's not a whole lot of scenarios where you can get that, a 10x return in 5 years. Where it gets really tricky is, let's say I had bought those options and now I'm a part owner of this company, and then I didn't want to be anymore, and they're a private company. Well, that's where it gets really complicated. You are not going to get a good value on your options because it's a private company. Not a whole lot of people are interested in buying private companies. In fact, based on the options contract, I can't just go sell the stock to just anyone. It kind of has to be like a weird process, and I think the company has first right of refusal and all this weird stuff. So believe it or not, when I first exercised my options, the company did actually ask if I wanted to let the company buy me out. They gave me an offer. It was reasonable at the time, but I felt like the company was going to do better. So I could have been paid out right then and there. It would have been much, much smaller. They were going to pay me out close to the current value of the company. That's how it worked for me. Ended up being pretty good. I know it's kind of boring, lots of talking, lots of words, and I know it has nothing to do with cars except for that windfall is going to make me have the ability to buy a car. So quick update on the project car. We ran into a snag. I'm going to talk about this in detail once the acquisition of this project car actually happens. Let's just say this project car has been very annoying and difficult to buy. And so I'm really looking forward to hopefully having something closed on this shortly. We've been working on this car for over a week, and we still don't have a paper saying it's ours, and we still haven't sent them any money because of complicated crap. I will give you details on all of that situation as soon as it unfolds. In the meantime, we will be back in Austin tomorrow, so I will resume doing more car stuff. I know we've got a lot of projects. Loper needs me to help him with his car. Richard is going to need some stuff. Believe it or not, he bought a exhaust for his 458, so we're going to be doing that. Tim has some dyno testing to do on his 348. Yeah, we've got a lot of cool stuff coming. So you're going to want to stay tuned. It's going to be sweet. What are you doing? You're chewing on the bone, huh? Is that good bone? Yeah, very content. Whoa, check out these birds. They're diving into the water. Clearly there's some fish or something right there. Oh, bloom. Dive, dive. Come on, get it. Splash. Oh, Mose. What's going on? What's going on out here? Huh? Let's go back in. It's getting wet.